Want a drink named after a 19th century racehorse? What about one named after a 15th century castle? Or how about one simply named for the color of the spot on the barrel? Well, then it's time for you to check out the best Irish whiskies of 2022. Redbreast is the world's biggest seller of single pot still whiskey, a liquor made from both malted and unmalted barley that's unique to Ireland. And the Redbreast 15-year-old Irish whiskey is one of the distillery's most coveted single pot still offerings. Triple distilled and matured in first fill and refill oak casks for at least 15 years, the drop is characterized by a rich and complex flavor. Not as fruity as its 21-year-old sister, and not as bold as its 12-year counterpart. The Redbreast 15-year-old Irish whiskey combines hints of fresh fruit, spices, and toasted wood, with some reviewers also detecting notes of toffee and caramel. Exuding a rich aroma of berries, this whiskey culminates in a long and sophisticated finish.
It gives you that little charcoal feeling and just comes out with a really well-balanced whiskey.
Richard Davey of BBC Good Food recommends drinking this whiskey with a dash of water to give the flavors room to spread out and really shine when you taste the final product. Billing itself as the best-selling Irish single malt whiskey in the United States, the Sexton Single Malt Irish Whiskey will set you back around $30, making for an undeniable gem of a bargain. Crafted using unpeated Irish malted barley and triple distilled in copper pot stills, this whiskey is aged for 4 years in casks that have previously housed Oloroso sherry, a fortified wine produced in Andalusia, Spain. Plus, it comes in a distinctive hexagonal bottle with a convenient black and copper pourer. Despite its youthful status, the Sexton Single Malt is characterized by a surprisingly decent body. Josh Peters of the Whiskey Jug notes that it's sweeter than its 80 proof standing would suggest. On the nose, the dark copper spirit carries aromas of malt, cocoa, apples, citrus, and of course, sherry. There are also some acetone and metallic notes thrown into the mix. The taste is characterized by a range of flavors including sherry, as well as malt, toffee, cocoa, cinnamon, nuts, dried apricots, and strawberry jam. Meanwhile, the long finish is citrusy and malty with hints of sherry and apricot. High-quality whiskey doesn't have to cost a fortune. At around $40, the Teeling Small Batch Irish Whiskey is a perfect mid-range offering. It's surprisingly smooth and flavorful for its high 92 proof status. Medium-bodied, it comes with a nose that hints at malt, dried fruit, toffee, and banana, as well as brown sugar, grain, and apricot. On the palate, it exudes flavors of malt, caramel, dried fruit, banana, and honey with hints of spice, vanilla taffy, and dark sweets. While the Teeling Small Batch Irish Whiskey doesn't come with an age statement, it's made with whiskeys that are under 6 years old. It also features a high malt-to-grain ratio. But what really makes this whiskey stand out from the pack is its 6-month rum barrel finish, which adds to the complexity of its flavor profile. Ideal for drinking on ice and a perfect addition to cocktails thanks to its notes of dark sugar and high proof, the Teeling Small Batch Irish Whiskey makes a nice addition to any liquor cabinet without breaking the bank.
Here at Teeling Whiskey, we are focusing on the art of maturation and crafting the finest Irish whiskey.
Building on the original Tyrconnell, the Tyrconnell 16-year-old single malt Irish whiskey is a high-quality selection for anyone willing to fork out around $100 for a bottle. Aged in bourbon barrels for 16 years, this particular whiskey is a limited release in a series of bottles with a special appellation. And if you're wondering what that name means, it comes from a chestnut colt that won the National Produce Stakes horse race way back in 1876. Produced at the Cooley Distillery in County Louth, the whiskey in this bottle is double distilled in uniquely shaped pot stills. The small stills feature long necks, a unique construction meant to ensure that the whiskey gets plenty of contact with the copper, which results in a more layered flavor profile. Bottled at 92 proof, the pour is matured in American oak bourbon barrels. Tyrconnell's 16-year-old single malt Irish whiskey's nose is rich with citrus and hints of oak. The palate features a light taste of green fruits. Meanwhile, the lingering and subtly sweet finish comes with unmistakable notes of oak. This whiskey is obviously no bargain, but you get what you pay for, so it's definitely worth the splurge. Drinking whiskey neat isn't always a pleasant experience, particularly if you're a newbie. In that case, if you've got a lackluster whiskey, you might find yourself reaching for your favorite mixer to cut the harshness. But that definitely won't be the case when it comes to the Connemara 12-year-old peated single malt Irish whiskey. This selection is ideal for serving at room temperature, even without mixers or ice. In fact, drinking the sipper neat is one of the best ways to fully appreciate its aroma and flavor. Connemara 12-year-old whiskey is the only commercially available single malt peated Irish whiskey today. The peat fire used to dry the malted barley during the production process is precisely what gives the final product its subtle, smoky aroma and flavor. According to the Spruce Eats, Connemara is peated at approximately half the phenol amount of Islay malt, Islay being a region of Scotland. In the end, it gives this Irish whiskey a lovely, mild flavor that can easily be enjoyed neat. It's also only 80 proof, which makes it highly drinkable straight. This golden-colored whiskey comes with a distinct smoky aroma and an underlying toffee-like sweetness. The flavor, meanwhile, hints at a forest fire, and features a slightly medicinal note balanced by hints of soft caramels. And the lingering finish is peaty with hints of chocolate.
That's Connemara. Beautiful.
Aged for at least 14 years in bourbon barrels, the Napogue Castle 16-year-old single malt Irish whiskey then spends a minimum of 2 years in Oloroso sherry casks. This is the reason for its characteristic nutty sherry notes. Produced at only one distillery, this whiskey is malty and fruity on the nose, and features a rich palate packed with sherry maltiness and hints of fruit and sweetness. Last but not least, the finish comes with a lingering sweetness, which whiskey base attributes to the distillery's use of bourbon casks. The Napogue Castle 16-year-old single malt derives its name from a 15th century Irish castle, which was purchased and restored by Mark Edwin Andrews in the 1960s. Andrews is also the man behind the Napogue Castle 1951, one of the oldest and scarcest commercially available Irish whiskies today. The Green Spot single pot still Irish whiskey harkens back to the time when a liquor merchant, Mitchell & Sons, kept track of its whiskey's age statements by marking the casks with a little paint. Blue for 7 years, green for 10, yellow for 12, and red for 15. It doesn't come with an age statement anymore, but if you still want to know that information, the sipper is aged between 7 and 10 years in sherry casks, as well as new and refill bourbon casks. According to wine enthusiast spirits editor Cara Newman, Green Spot single pot still Irish whiskey is best enjoyed on its own with no input from mixers. It's rich in hints of spices, aromatic oils, fruit, barley, and toasted wood. Plus, it has a spicy body with notes of cloves, green apples, and toasted oak. And why, you might be wondering, would we want to pour this amber elixir over ice? It has to do with a process called retronasal olfaction. When whiskey is chilled on ice, warming it in the mouth releases aromatic molecules that elevate the sipping experience to the next level. As the brains behind the Middleton Method and Madness single pot still Irish whiskey proclaim on their website, it's not often we stray from the traditional oak, but one sip suggests it was well worth the deviation. Made from malted and unmalted barley, this whiskey is matured in Oloroso sherry and bourbon barrels before being transferred to chestnut casks, rather than the more traditional oak, from the Isère region of France. While this would practically never fly in Scotland, where whiskey has to be aged for at least 3 years in oak barrels, Ireland's distillers aren't quite as restrictive as their neighbor to the east. The Middleton Method and Madness single pot still Irish whiskey evokes aromas of red licorice, rosemary, mint, and ginger. Meanwhile, the palate is full of the flavors of sweet fruit and spices, cinnamon toast, and ripe banana. The finish is more evocative of green tea, wood, and fruit and spice. BBC Good Food has called the hint of chestnut that can be found among this sipper's flavors delightful. Jameson is one of the world's most recognizable Irish whiskeys, and it's also one of the best ones to introduce to whiskey novices. Ideally served in either cocktails or on the rocks, Jameson is a triple distilled malt whiskey that's been aged in oak for a minimum of 4 years. It's then blended with grain whiskey, resulting in a light flavor and texture that's just about perfect for anyone new to the spirit. Smooth and easy to drink, Jameson comes with a subtle floral aroma with notes of sweetness and spicy wood. On the palate, this light-tasting whiskey is characterized by flavors of malt, vanilla, and unripe citrus, as well as hints of cocoa, fruit, and caramel. The finish, meanwhile, is malty with a hint of oak and earth. Jameson Distillery was founded way back in 1780, though it actually debuted as the Steins family Bow Street Distillery. It took on its current name after John Jameson took it over in 1805, and changed the name to his own in 1810. By the 19th century, it was one of the biggest distillers of whiskey in the entire world. It wasn't all smooth sailing, though. The company started to struggle after Ireland declared its independence from Britain, finally shoring itself up when it merged with John Powers and Cork Distillers to form the Irish Distillers Group in 1966. Made with malt and grain, the Slane triple-casked Irish whiskey can call itself triple-casked because it's been aged naturally enough in 3 different types of casks. In this case, those casks are made of virgin oak, seasoned bourbon, and ones that had previously housed Oloroso sherry. While this whiskey has no age statement, it has been aged in first fill bourbon casks for 20 months, virgin oak casks for 20 months, and Oloroso sherry butts for 24 months. A product of a distillery located in County Meath near the historic Slane Castle, the Slane triple-casked Irish whiskey is peppered with subtle aromas and layers of flavor, including fruit, caramel, vanilla, butterscotch, and toasted oak. The palate is rich with spice that's sweetened with hints of vanilla, caramel, butterscotch, and dried fruit. Last but not least, the finish evokes notes of caramelized wood sugar and dry fruit. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more mashed videos about your favorite drinks are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.